Hey everyone. So in this video, I'm going to attempt to do kind of a compare and contrast between the draft EA, which is now a 2-year-old document, and what was just submitted as the final EA. I'm starting here. This is the draft EA, so now a 2-year-old submission, and this is towards the end of the document, but how Leica responded to, at that time, the known community concerns. And we had already had a town hall, multiple presentations to neighborhood boards. So the high level concerns, I mean, they're they're well known by then, by now here, well, by 2 years ago, and I mean they're still well known today. And a lot of it had to do with the parking, traffic, scale, and size. Um, so anyway, so yeah, they had four kind of things that they said in response to the community. Hmm? Increase the minimum age from 55 to 62, and then they make this vague statement: should reduce the number of tenants who own and use cars. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's true. I mean, people well over 65 are definitely still driving a car, so I don't. Okay, whatever. They reduce the size of each unit, so it's probably even you could argue it's even more dense now, right? Because you've reduced the square footage of living area, but it's same one bedroom, so it's the same. They're just giving the residents less space to live in. Didn't change the rent, right? The rent is the same, so they can charge the same rent for a smaller space, and then they're noting how that's positive. But I mean that they didn't really scale down the actual density. I mean, you could argue they've increased the density, right? Because they've decreased the square footage per unit of the same type. In this case, this is going to be really interesting here. So one of the things is, hey, they actually increased the parking. So in the very, very first iterations, they had 185 total spaces, of which not all were for the tenants. Some was for their community center and whatnot, and the garden. But in this thing, they actually increased it, and so they're up to, I believe at the time of the DEA, they had increased it from 185 to 245. So that's kind of what this third bullet is saying. And then they're going to reduce the amount of redevelopment of the small parcel, which in the past it was going to be this big, almost like a commercial thing, and whatever, retail or whatever. So they plan to scale it back based on the initial drawings that they showed. Okay, and this is still in the DEA. This is the actual response to one of the claims that the public had about parking and traffic impacts. And at the last, they said, well, given the objection, um, they're going to increase on-site parking from 185 to 245. So um, that's in the draft EA, right? That now is 2 years old. So now I'm going to transition over to the final EA. Okay, so now I'm in the final, so I'm back. This is the final EA now, the current document that's being reviewed. I'm at the same answer, same question, and they curiously redacted that that last sentence. Um, okay, and I'm gonna go. Okay, so this is the similar section where they're summarizing what they're gonna do in response to the community, and the this parking section is now they reduced it. So parking is now based on the minimum required by law. And then of course they're just saying, well, it's going to preserve some selected trees. So they're trying to spin it in a positive, but I mean the project is you know it's removing many trees. Anyway, but yeah, so it's notable to me. One of the one of the few concessions that was made during the draft EA process is now being rescinded in the final EA. Another notable difference was having to do with the sewer access and sewer capacity. So I'm in the draft EA, and in that time, this was they had a 2021 they were approved for 288 one-bedroom units um, that would attach to a lateral on East Manoa Road. So even at this time, I was kind of curious because they have two buildings on like the East Manoa side of the Woodlawn Ditch, and two buildings were on the Lower Road side. So to me, it was kind of I wasn't sure like how I mean how could the buildings on the Lower Road side even get back to the sewer lateral in East Manoa, right? Because you have to cross over the ditch, which they didn't say they were going to do anything. But anyway, back then they had this approval for 288 one-bedroom units. Okay, so let's see what happens. This is 2 years later in the final EA. So their initial 288 unit sewer capacity whatever approval, it expired, and so they had to go back for another one. And they did just receive another kind of a renewal, but this renewal is different. So this renewal only approves 72 units, phase one. Only one phase is approved to connect to the current municipal city sewer on East Manoa Road. Um, and then phases 2 through 4 are dependent now on the owner, so Leica, installing like it's a wastewater like detention tank. Okay, so let's see. Let's read this here. Um, so their mitigation plan for this is that they 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 can will plan or whatever to propose, they're going to propose to install a 15,000 gallon sewer overflow tank, on the site somewhere, and that's to mitigate the, until the city sewers infrastructure is um, is upgraded, and this is the part, and a lot of this actually came out in the I believe it was in the comments to the draft DA. A lot of neighbors and the community commented that our sewer system does get flooded out when it floods, and so that's kind of what is stated here. There's a few prior instances of the wastewater system overflowing due to the extreme storm events because of their saying it's rainwater infiltration into the wastewater, the sewer lines. And so the mitigation that they're proposing is this holding tank for the sewage. And again, uh, this for me set off red flags. It's the same ones that the bells that rang about the drainage, the detention for storm water. Just it's this idea that you know if a storm like a rain, a storm rain is causing this event, then the extreme storm event, I mean, it could be anything, right? It doesn't, all the modeling for the, for this, like let's say the drainage was a 10-year modeled storm, whatever. But in reality, right, real storms can and will be more than the 10-year modeled storm, and um, and then they're admitting it will load our wastewater in Manoa, our wastewater pipes currently. So, I mean, to me, when you're talking about detention, this number, oh yeah, 15,000 gallon, like, if we can hold that, we're good. I mean, that's, it can't be good for all cases, right? There's going to be there could be a storm large enough, long enough, overwhelms the wastewater, the sewer pipes long enough where the 15,000 gallon can overflow, right? I mean, so this to me it was a difference between the draft EA and the final EA. I thought it was kind of a noteworthy difference, and my concern, the mitigation proposed is brittle, just like the mitigations proposed for the stormwater, right? Which is that they're going after a modeled storm, 10-year. I mean, so okay, so in a 20-year storm, now we're gonna get sewage overflows. That's kind of what it's saying, right? Okay, the last main difference I wanted to point out here was the schedule. So, I mean, obviously, if you delay the FEA, the final EA, for 2 years, that obviously impacts the anticipated schedule. So this is the draft EA, and they're thinking that they could build the first phase in late 24, then 1 year, 1 year per phase, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that was the plan. And they actually said here that in the first phase, they could do infrastructure and site work for all phases would happen in the beginning. Okay, that's what they said. Yeah, let's go to the final EA. And so yeah, okay, so you delay the final EA publishing by 2 years. So yeah, you could just kick phase one 2 years. Okay, that's fine. Um, Curiously, you lost some detail, right? We don't know what this includes. Does the site work? Is the site work broken up per phase or not? It wasn't clear here anymore. To me, what was noteworthy was this big time jump. So now they're saying, okay, phase one, okay, but then it's after 2030. So this is at least a 4 year gap, right? At least after 2030. So we're talking about at least a 4 year gap between phase one and even phase two. And then these are after that. So I guess that that called into question, at least for me, the site work, right? I mean, I was concerned even before if you do all the site work for the entire, you know, um, building up front. There's a lot of destruction of forest and clearing, right, in preparation for these four buildings, and then you're gonna not build the buildings for a couple of years, right? There's a lot of just dirt waiting to get washed into the stream. The woodlawn ditch, which then would get to Manoa Stream. But now it's even more drastic, right? We're talking about at least a 4 year gap between the first phase and any subsequent phases. Okay, so that was some of the key differences that I noticed in the final EA, and I'm gonna now talk about a few, to me, shockingly similar, similarities. The first is the cost. Okay, so 2 years ago, draft EA, they're gonna say all of the units will cost 20 million per phase, so the whole entire project will cost $80 million. And this was 2 years ago, and even 2 years ago, I questioned this number because in drafts of this document that I saw a year prior, it was the same number. So, for me, I was like, wait, going from 2021-ish, right, late 21 to 22, a year, and that was a year, right, where things were in flux with the supply chain, everything, right? I was shocked, right? How can it still be, 20 million per phase, 80 million total? And that was 2 years ago. Okay, so now uh, we'll jump back to this is the current final EA for today, right? Okay, 2024, end of 2024, and it's like the exact same text. Um, and then it's like the exact same text. So a estimate has been prepared. I mean, I'm sure it has been, but it probably it wasn't in the last 2 years, as it's the same number. Right? I don't know any. I I can't think of any construction cost estimate that would be the same. If you asked, last month versus 2 or 3 years ago. But yet, the estimate for the price, cost estimates are exactly um, the same.